The United Nations has called for an investigation into the attacks that have killed more than 70 people in Yemen. The air raid on Saada city carried out by the Saudi-led coalition. The world body is demanding prompt and transparent investigations into the incident to ensure accountability. A detention center holding migrants in Saada city was bombed late on Friday, according to the Red Cross in Yemen. More than 100 people were killed during the raid and dozens others were wounded. Saudi-led coalition has been conducting deadly air raids in Saada and the port city of Hadida, Saudi, in recent times. Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, has also put the number of wounded alone at about 200. Save the Children, meanwhile, says at least 3 children were killed in Hadida attack. Yemen's Houthi health minister has appealed to the international community for medical aid. He has accused the Saudi coalition of deliberately targeting civilians. Air raids also hit near the capital Sana'a, held by the Houthis since late 2014. On Tuesday, at least 14 people were killed in the Saudi air raids in the capital Sana'a. Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the heightening of the conflicts is of great concern and has called on all sides to de-escalate. And to talk more about this is Thembisa Fakude, who is a senior research fellow at the Africa-Asia Dialogues. He joins us from here in Johannesburg. Thembisa, you've been looking at this for quite a while now. Just share with me your thoughts. So what we're seeing now, if the United Nations is calling for de-escalation, including the United States, is this a war of equals?
No, it's not a war of equals, and it's not going to stop anytime soon because of the Iranian involvement. So you have the Gulf countries led by Saudi Arabia and other countries from Africa, including Sudan, fighting the Houthis in Yemen. And since the beginning of the war, you had Iran coming in, hence the new technology we're seeing applied by the Houthis against the Emiratis and Saudis. So the war is far from over, and I'm not quite sure whether the United Nations will do anything now, since they failed to stop the war from when it started in 2015. So it's a little bit too little too late for the United Nations to expect that the Houthis will stop fighting and firing the rockets to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates.
We'll get into why there's been a failure to bring about a resolution to this conflict. The Houthis are claiming that they hit a target in Abu Dhabi's Dhafra air base, saying that the attack achieved its objective with high accuracy. Just how much can we believe the victories claimed by the Houthis, and how much support is Iran able to grant them in order to have fair play, so to speak?
Well, the truth behind the matter is that we've seen Saudi Arabia retaliating. So there is an element of truth in what the Houthis are claiming at the moment in Abu Dhabi and some places in Dubai, by the way. So they've threatened that they'll continue with their rocket attacks, not only in Abu Dhabi, but they'll go to an extent of attacking Dubai, which of course will bring a level of panic, since Dubai is the most one of the most important cities in the United Arab Emirates because of its tourist attraction. So it seems as if the Houthis are digging in their heels and they are going ahead retaliating to both so-called powerful countries in the Middle East. One wouldn't have expected that at this time of the year we'll still be talking about Houthis fighting the powerhouse of the Gulf, that is Saudi Arabia. In 2015, when Mohammed bin Salman engaged in this war, he promised the Gulf countries that it was going to be a swift war. But alas, today we're seeing the Houthis still standing ground and fighting 2 very important nations in the Gulf, that is United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia.
And you say that it's 7 years on, and meanwhile the Houthis have, with the assistance of Iran, improved their fighting skills and their war arsenal. But what has been the impact of what's happening in Yemen? I believe the humanitarian crisis there is worsening as a result.
The situation is dire in Yemen, particularly in Sana'a, where Houthis are in control and in charge. So it continues to deteriorate. They are relying by and large from the humanitarian agencies like the United Nations. But since they've got nothing to lose, I think they've resolved that they will take this war to the end. And Saudi Arabia has not stopped its atrocities in Yemen. It continues to bombard the Houthi installations in that country. And the Houthis had no choice, we are told, but to retaliate. And the expansionist project of Iran has seen it entrenching itself in Yemen, which was, by the way, the trigger of the campaign led by Saudi Arabia, because they didn't want to see another country controlled or influenced by Iran in the region, following what Iran has been doing in Iraq and in Lebanon, supporting Hezbollah. So the expansionist program of Iran led the coalition of the Saudi-led to try and suppress the Houthi in Yemen, but they've since have not succeeded. And we see the Houthis going on with the attacks, and now they've escalated using the drones and the new sophisticated arsenal in targeting both the UAE and Saudi Arabia.
The importance of the Houthis in the region, talk to us through that. And we speak about a Saudi-led coalition, but Saudi Arabia is the only remaining major power. The UAE partially withdrew from the coalition, and Qatar pulled out of the coalition in 2017.
Well, the Houthis want to control Yemen after they toppled the regime of Abdul Ali Saleh, President Abdul Ali Saleh, in 2015, and the plan was for them to rule Yemen. They were part of the Arab Spring, when you saw many countries that were toppled, or the dictators that were toppled by popular uprisings in the Middle East, and Yemen was one of those countries. And they've been fighting ever since, because Saudi Arabia, as I've said, did not want to see an Iranian influence or dominated government next door. So they've tried very hard to ensure that they don't allow Houthi to assume power in that part of the world. But the other thing, which is very important, Yemen is the homeland of all Arabs. Most Arabs come from Yemen, including Osama bin Laden, by the way. He was a Yemeni before they migrated some couple of years back into Saudi Arabia. So Yemen is known as the homeland of the Arabs. And Arabs, particularly the Khalijis or the Gulf Arabs, that is the Kuwaitis, the Qataris and Iraqi Arabs in Saudi Arabia, wouldn't have allowed their homeland, in inverted commas, to become a Shia-dominated homeland. So that's why they decided, amongst other things, to ensure that they stop the advances of a Shia-dominated government playing a role once again in the Gulf, that is in Yemen in 2015.
So when the Houthis say that they are fighting a corrupt system and foreign aggression, I'd imagine that it extends beyond the forces within the region.
Well, when they started, they were fighting Ali Abdullah Saleh, who was the president at the time, long-serving president in Yemen. And it was because of the influence of the neighboring countries, the Arab Spring, that was taking place in the neighboring countries. But ever since, we've seen other actors from different parts playing a role in Yemen, particularly Iran. So that has kind of complicated issues. As I've said, the Iranian expansionist program in the Middle East has created a lot of problems. We know that Iran is playing an important role in Iraq, for example, which led to the killing of Qasem al-Soleimani, if you remember, in 2019, leading to 2020. And also they are playing an important role in Lebanon. Kuwait is already a Shia state. Bahrain, to an extent, has a large Shia majority, although the leadership there is Sunni. So Saudi Arabia wouldn't allow to see that Shia or Iran expansionist program impacting on its neighbor, which is Yemen. So that's why they've decided that they're going to engage in this war, and they'll use whatever it takes to stop the Houthis from ever gaining power in that part of the world. We know that since the beginning of the war, Yemen is separated into two. There's South and Northern Yemen, which were, by the way, the historical borders that divided Yemen. So we see those borders being resuscitated by the war.
Now, there was a UN Independent International Investigation Commission to look into possible Yemen war crimes. You say the UN itself has failed to be the mediator in this conflict, even though now it's calling for de-escalation. Where do you pin the failure?
Well, number one is they've allowed the situation to deteriorate to the situation that we find ourselves now. I mean, Yemen has been destroyed by the war. The famine has reached very serious levels with many people at the moment living Yemen in droves. We've got millions of people that have been displaced in Yemen, many of whom are displaced within Yemen, but some of them have gone to neighboring countries. So the UN has failed the Yemeni people. I mean, since 2015, there's been enough coverage of what's been going on in Yemen. There's also been enough coverage of the atrocities that have been taking place there, including famine that has since rocked the entire country. And the UN has been dragging its feet in terms of addressing those challenges in Yemen. And the people of Yemen had actually gave up on the United Nations ever involving itself in trying to alleviate the situation in that country. So there is no hope at the moment. There are certain countries that are still regarded as friends of the Yemenis, both by the government or the interim government of Yemen and the Houthis. One of those countries is Qatar, which was, by the way, saved by the blockade in 2017 when the Gulf countries led by Saudi Arabia and Egypt led a blockade against Qatar, which Qatar found it convenient for it to get out of that coalition. But Qatar was, as you remember, part of the coalition that was also fighting in Yemen. So since then, Qatar has established a relationship with the Houthis because, again, of the relationship that Qatar enjoys with its neighbor Iran, which is just across the Gulf. So Qatar is perhaps one of those countries that can still play a role in ensuring that there is some semblance of peace and at least negotiations between the Houthis and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates.
Thembisa, thank you very much for your time and your insights. Thembisa Fakude is a Senior Research Fellow at the Africa-Asia Dialogue.